Mike. How's it going?
Good evening, Frank.
Good evening, Mike.
Great to see you.
Great to see you, yeah.
How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fabulous.
Yeah?
Yeah, really good. Things are, staying in the moment as much as I can.
I love that.
Yeah.
Trying.
Until I fall out of the moment.
All part of it, right?
Yeah, just getting back on track.
That's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like I love Wednesdays because a lot of thoughts come up in my head, and until Wednesday happens, so to speak, unless I'm talking with clients, what have you, I have to get out of my head. So like Wednesday, like me and Mike finish up here, it's like my head is completely clear till tomorrow morning, and then it starts filling up again.
Getting it all out.
It's like a release. It's like it's a good thing. And we were talking about this earlier about like having your imagination and having thoughts put in it. And we want to imprint it onto the outside world. For one, we want to let go of it. So if you hold on to it and don't experience it, that's the torture of life. It's kind of like a dream you never experienced. It could torture you because you want to give it off to the world. But maybe because you believe you can't have it, you don't fulfill the dream. Or the imagination doesn't solidify it in the physical world. But it's about getting rid of it. Once I put it out in the world, it's no longer mine. And there's a relief to it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I kind of want to touch on that today. What you just said. Well, a little piece.
Yeah.
The worthiness factor. This is something for me personally, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there. We often don't feel like we deserve to feel happy.
Yeah.
And that is a big block for a lot of people out there. We feel like in order to feel a certain way or to relax, even relax, we have to deserve it. We've been conditioned this way from a very young age. But when you talk to people and you're like, why aren't you happy? Why don't you relax? They don't feel like they deserve it. I haven't done enough. I haven't checked enough boxes off of society's to-do list in order to feel like I have accomplished or I am deserving of this fictitious idea, that we all create. Like I have not, made X amount of money or had children or bought a house or whatever.
Yeah.
So I can't feel worthy.
Yeah.
This is a big block.
Yeah,
let's talk about that.
You could be a billionaire, and if your worthiness is represented from the outside world, you'll never feel worthy because there's always more to get.
There's a lot of millionaires and billionaires out there that don't feel worthy.
Yeah, and then obviously poor people too. It's all over the spectrum. So when you actually look at it, so worthiness is a state, just like deservingness is a state. And I think we touched on this last week, but it's just something we could touch on for the rest of our lives, and never get to to the bottom of it. But I like to keep trying. But when you're in a state, say like the state of Arizona, you're going to see mountains and valleys and cactus. But if you're looking to see an ocean, you have to leave the state and go to a state where there's an ocean, such as California. Now, it's not to pin mountains against the ocean. It's ridiculous. They're both beautiful. But if you're expecting to see the ocean prior to going to California, this is where we go wrong. So you must shut yourself off to the outside world and to enter into the state in which you want to be. So when you're in a state of joy, the thoughts that come across your head are nothing but joyous thoughts. When you're in a state of fear, the thoughts that come through are thoughts of fear. It's not like a thought of fear crept into the state of joy. You fell into the state of fear, and that's all there is fear. So when you're focused on the outside world, it's always fleeting. That's why you can't grab it. And so when you're trying to grab the outside world, I don't care how many cars, how many houses you have, you can't grab them, can't hold them. They keep fleeting to some extent. But when you go inward, that spirit is never fleeting. It's always forever expanding. But then through your imagination, it allows you to project what vision you have inside onto the outside world, and then you experience the material world. So me and Mike are not here to disassociate or tell people not to be in the material world. Quite the contrary. It's just don't put the cart in front of the horse. Put the horse in front of the cart, and you have to go inward. Find the state in which you want to be in to have the experience in which you want to have, and it will come true. But you have to let go of having it, because we're too focused. Like, okay, when I get this, I'll be happy. Like you said this a lot. And I'm like, you'll never be happy from that standpoint. Like if if I'm waiting to walk on water and I'm miserable, I'm just going to bitch about how my shoes are getting wet when I hit the water. And even though I can muster up the fact of floating across the water without sinking, I'm still going to have an issue with it because I'm focused on that. But it's not that.
I guess, like, for me personally, I remember really thinking, like, I don't deserve to relax. I haven't accomplished enough. And it's this, you got to get out, you got to hustle, you got to grind. And I wouldn't allow myself to relax.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
In fact, I looked at it as like weakness. I was like, no, that's you not, wanting this. Don't you get out there. You're worth more. You can do this. And it was such a self-hurting experience,
It was torture.
Yeah, it was literally torture.
Which teaches you not to do that. So
Absolutely.
It serves a purpose. Yeah.
But I remember going through that and thinking it was so real, and I was like, I don't deserve this because I haven't accomplished these things. And it's not until you let go of having to accomplish anything that your mind is clear enough to allow you to accomplish things. And so when you're at home saying, I don't deserve to be happy, I haven't done enough, or I haven't made enough money, or I haven't gone to enough schooling, I haven't gone to university, whatever. These are all man-made, created ideas that you're living by, and they mean nothing. And the sooner you see through this, the sooner you allow yourself to
and
let go.
There's a correlation. The reason man came up with these ideas, it's not this arbitrary, man in the ivory tower. It's like, let's just mess with these people. One day, and I'm just kind of tell it in the story form, one day somebody was off doing something and the world noticed the person and they were successful. So all they could do is accredit his accolades and what he did to get there or what she did to get there, and they try to copy it. But what you don't understand is how the person actually felt prior to the doing. Therefore, then the accomplishment is just the solidifying the imagination onto the outside world. But when you actually observe it, you're missing the whole thing. It's almost like looking in a mirror and observing with my hands up, and then this is my right hand, but when I look in the mirror, it's going to appear that it's my left hand. It's going to look backwards. So when you try to reverse engineer what somebody did to replicate their what you call success, it will never happen. It's never what they did. It's how they felt. And even people who wrote books on this, and they didn't understand the laws, but they fell into them, but they felt lucky, so they continue to duplicate this. But they wrote a book on the 7 steps to get here. And I'm like, where were those 7 steps prior to getting there? They got there. And then they revert. Well, how did I get here? Well, let's go back. And all they did is go back 7 steps. They could have stopped at 5. They could have went to 9. Where?
What has the best ring to it?
How many chapters do I want to write in this book? And 7 seems to be, a number that's stuck within humanity because there's 7 days in a week. There's 7 breakdowns of the DNA, even though there's 12. There's 5 parts that are doubled and then 2 singles, so it's 5 and 2. Which is 7, but the 5 are doubled, that's 10. So when you start to look at it that way, it's like, okay, you can see how 7 is significant. So maybe that's why they use the word 7. But no one could ever follow that path, not even the person who wrote the book, and get the same result. They can't.
Elaborating on that point, this is what I mean when I say we are all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
When it doesn't matter if you're looking at this from like a business standpoint, these different life coaches, these different Robert Kiyosaki types, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all of these people, everybody, what they're preaching, these different plans, these different, these steps to this to achieve, everybody is talking about the same thing, and it's going within.
Yeah. And if you don't go within, without is nothing. Because actually, we all go within. We all have an imagination.
We're just not aware we're in control of
Yeah, because I was talking to someone the
it's
other
kind
day.
of running on autopilot.
Yeah, and it's true. We all imagine. You imagine the hell you're living in because you couldn't be living in hell unless you imagined it. And so when I say you're imagining hell, you're being influenced by outward influences of your imagination. It's kind of like if you're present. We were talking about this earlier. If you're fully present when you actually go into imagination, there isn't going to be any non-preferential attributes into your imagination. But I was telling to somebody the other day about like the power of imagination. And but I remember years ago, I like, okay, I want to imagine myself living in a 15,000 square foot house and 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and then I'm like, oh shit, I got to clean all these bathrooms come Sunday. It's like, holy shit. So even in my imagination, there was this like dread. And why? It's because at some point, before I got to this place I was in, I was actually cleaning my house. So if you live in a house, 2,000 square foot, and then you're going to move into one that's 15,000 square foot, you still assume you're carrying that same body that has to clean each bathroom. It's like, oh shit, it was tough cleaning 2.5 bathrooms, let alone 5. And it's like, yeah, I'll just stick to this house. And yeah, but
this is what the mind does.
But
this is what we do.
But this is our imagination.
Yep.
But when I'm present, that doesn't seep in because that has to come from my past.
We hide by saying we want to be realistic.
No, what I'm saying is,
you know what I mean?
How would I know to clean my house in the present moment? Because it's something I did in the past. Because when I'm sitting on the couch in my lotus position, whatever position I'm imagining, I'm not cleaning my bathroom. And it's very interesting is when you become fully present, you'll only imagine in a preferential setting. And then you actually generate a feeling, and that feeling then will give you an output of what things to do. It'll give you impulses.
But you see what you're describing? We dull our imagination because we say, oh, I need to be realistic about this.
But know this.
And there's no realistic about your imagination.
But I also want to emphasize on this. People in the world today have great imaginations. We really do. Like, when I look around us, yes, I could point to the news and show us the hellish imagination. But I could also point out and find out way more great stuff that's going on there that the news is not reporting. Like I'm at the gym, and at the gym they show these couple of different, they have screens up and they'll show sports, but they show these amazing superhuman things people do. Like someone like flipping off a building and landing 20 feet down the ground, and this crazy stuff that you only had with that CGI could do, and they're actually doing it, and it's not. So there is more of that growth going on than we're led on to believe. We are expanding as a species tremendously. It's probably why we don't put up with the stuff we see on the news. But when people are like, oh, my God, the world's going crazy. I'm like, is it really going crazy? I'm like, if you went back and just studied any bit of history, just go back, 200 years ago, there was a lot more violence with a lot less people on the planet, and it was acceptable. Nowadays, you yell at somebody, you call them a wrong adjective, they get offensive. Now, I joke about that, but there's a lot less violence with 3 times as many people on the planet from 200 years ago. How many people on the planet 200 years ago? Early 19th century it was maybe 3 billion. Now we got 8 billion. So 200 years ago it was even before that. So we're in the 21st century. So I could have my figures wrong, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about.
No, exactly.
So there is a lot more cooperation on the planet. So me and Mike want to let you know is we're on a good path. You're not doing anything wrong. We're doing everything really good. But people are trying to make us like you're doing something wrong, and the guilt comes in. And the guilt is what diminishes the moment in time when you're having that great imagination.